What if 2026 isn't just another year, but a script already written? A strange moment captured during a live news broadcast showed a fast-moving UFO streaking past the White House. And that is bringing up a familiar question. Did The Simpsons already predict something like this? In the episode, "The Presidential Candidates Are Aliens," the show presents a surreal but pointed scenario. Two presidential candidates delivered hollow, contradictory speeches filled with phrases like "forward not backward" and "twirling towards freedom." This immediately framed politics as a performance, not a substance. Beneath the humor, the episode escalates into a conspiracy. Both candidates are revealed to be alien imposters, while the real politicians have been abducted and hidden away. Homer Simpson, the only one who knows the truth, struggles to convince anyone, dismissed as irrational despite being correct. The episode is not exactly about aliens, but about perception, disbelief, and the unsettling possibility that something extraordinary could happen in plain sight without changing public behavior. Even when the aliens, Kang and Kodos, are exposed, they calmly admit their identity and continue the election, arguing that the system itself leaves voters no actual alternative. The outcome remains unchanged. One of them wins, and life continues, even as humanity submits to alien control without even knowing. Now many are wondering, is this a prediction for what might happen in the future? Well, it seems like it might be true when you look at the real-world footage. A sleek, fast-moving object was spotted darting across the sky near the White House, visible for only a short time during a news segment. The speed appeared unnatural, almost instant, leaving viewers asking whether it was a drone, a visual artifact, or something more unusual. The setting was the symbolic center of American political power, and this adds weight to the moment. This isn't a random sighting in an isolated area, but a UFO sighting that was directly above one of the most scrutinized locations in the world. The footage immediately sparked interest and investigations from ufologists and experts around the world. After zooming in and slowing the footage down, they saw clearly that this was definitely not a human-made aircraft. It wasn't a plane, helicopter, or even balloon, and the speed was unlike anything they had ever seen before. The golden cigar-shaped UFO flashed by instantly, with no wings, propellers, or even noise. In an instant, it was like it was never there. But the government didn't give a statement about what this UFO could be, although ufologists have their own ideas. Could this mean that extraterrestrial beings or technology is watching over one of the biggest centers of power in the world? And what does this mean for us? Some point to the Simpsons episode and wonder whether there is some truth in this. Although it might not exactly be that aliens have replaced our leaders, it could still mean that there's some form of extraterrestrial monitoring going on. After all, why have we seen so many UFO sightings near the White House and military bases? Well, this might not be the only thing that The Simpsons has predicted so far. The Springfield Files. What if The Simpsons didn't joke about UFOs, but actually mapped out exactly how the world would react decades later? In the 1997 episode, The Springfield Files, Homer stumbled upon a glowing figure in the woods. The footage was blurry, the story seemed ridiculous, and the entire town turned it into a spectacle. The media picked it up, and suddenly, it wasn't just a sighting. Soon, the FBI arrives, led by Fox Mulder, who believes that there are really aliens, and Dana Scully, who asks for proof. The entire situation escalates into a full investigation filled with tension, theories, and public fascination. And then comes the twist. The alien turned out to not be an extraterrestrial invasion. Instead, it was Leonard Nimoy narrating the story. And the creature itself turns out to be Mr. Burns, glowing from medical treatments, distorted by perspective, and completely misunderstood. The truth was real, visible, and strange, but not what people thought. Now, shift that structure onto real life. For years, military pilots reported encounters with objects they couldn't explain. They saw fast-moving, shape-shifting UFOs that sometimes even defied known physics. But instead of immediate disclosure, the information stayed buried. Then came a shocking leak. In 2017, footage started surfacing. These were grainy infrared clips later known as FLIR-1, GIMBAL, and Go Fast. These weren't random videos, but they were recorded by U.S. Navy pilots tracking objects that they couldn't exactly identify. At first, the government didn't fully admit that this really happened. There was confusion, denial, and internal debate, almost like the early chaos in Springfield. Then, years later, the Pentagon confirmed that these videos were real and officially released them in 2020, saying that the objects remain unidentified. Just look at the pattern. From a strange sighting and an official investigation to blurry footage spreading everywhere, and finally, a partial truth. It was almost identical to the structure of the Springfield Files. In the Simpsons episode, the truth wasn't hidden forever, but when it came out, it didn't exactly resolve everything. But in real life, the Pentagon didn't say aliens. All they said was that it was unidentified. The footage is real, the encounters are real, but there's just one problem. They can't explain it. When watching this episode of The Simpsons, looking at Mulder and Scully reveals how the government really approaches UFO investigations and how they come about with their conclusions. Mulder and Scully crossover. In the same episode, after Homer saw the aliens in the woods, it quickly attracted the attention of the FBI, and that was when Fox Mulder and Dana Scully arrived. Mulder walked in already convinced. To him, this fits a bigger pattern of hidden truths and government secrets. But Scully pushes back immediately. She tests, questions, and analyzes, and although she doesn't deny something happened, she refuses to label it as an alien without any proof. In real life, too, a pilot might report seeing an object moving in ways that don't make sense, especially since the footage is usually blurry, fast, and hard to explain. Some people react like Mulder and suspect that this might be evidence of an extraterrestrial situation and even a government cover-up. Others respond like Scully, saying that unidentified doesn't exactly mean extraterrestrial. It just means we don't know the answer yet. Back in Springfield, the investigation builds tension. Tests are run. Evidence is gathered. The entire town shows up, expecting answers. And then the truth appears, literally glowing in front of everyone. But it isn't what they expected. There was no real alien, and the entire thing was just a misunderstanding. But what if modern UFO disclosure is sitting in that exact same moment? After all, we have the footage, the witnesses, and the official investigations now. Governments admit that objects exist that they can't identify, and they don't even know where they came from and where they went. But we still don't know the final answer. We have Mulder, who was demanding answers and assuming there's more behind the curtain. And we have Scully, which represents the system itself, slow, methodical, and unwilling to jump ahead of the evidence. Every new sighting creates two parallel narratives. One says, "This is bigger than we're being told." The other says, "We need more data." Both move forward at the same time, never fully canceling each other out. But The Simpsons causes us to wonder, what if the ending is the same too? In The Simpsons, the truth was misinterpreted. Everyone saw the same thing, but they didn't understand it correctly until the very end. What if today's sightings are real but misunderstood? Simpsons, alien abduction, and real cases. The Hungry Are the Damned segment from The Simpsons' Treehouse of Horror is a comedy take on classic alien abduction tropes. The Simpsons are suddenly lifted from a backyard BBQ into a spaceship, introduced to strange beings named Kang and Kodos, weighed, fed lavishly, and left to wonder whether they're guests or the main course before being dropped back home. It's based on satire and references sci-fi like To Serve Man, but it uses all the elements that we see in alleged real alien abductions and encounters. Everyone that has reported being abducted by aliens has talked about having authority, figures on a ship, strangely clinical procedures, and communication that blurs the line between human and otherworldly. Let's compare that to the Barney and Betty Hill case, which is probably the first widely publicized alien abduction story in modern history. On a September night in 1961, this interracial American couple were driving through New Hampshire when they saw a strange object. They later discovered they couldn't remember about 2 hours of that night. It was a missing time element that many abducted people reveal. But after undergoing hypnosis, they remembered being taken aboard a craft where humanoid figures oversaw them. Betty even drew a star map that one of the beings showed her. The idea of a leader figure and medical-style examination is similar to what happened to the Simpsons family. Then there's Travis Walton's 1975 experience, one of the most notorious alleged abductions. Walton was a logger in Arizona whose crew saw a bright light in the forest. When he approached, he vanished right before their eyes. There was a beam of light, and suddenly he disappeared, quite similar to what happened in the episode of The Simpsons. His co-workers quickly rushed to the police to report the case, but, as you can expect, this was unbelievable. The cops even suspected that they harmed him and came up with an elaborate story to cover it up. He later reappeared 5 days later, claiming that light had taken him aboard a craft and that he had foggy memories of beings and a clinical interior. Many skeptics still believe that this is a hoax, but Walton's story has become one of the biggest parts of UFO lore today. What if we read The Simpsons cartoon alien experience side by side with these real accounts? At heart, both types of stories use the same narrative beats: sudden disappearance, eerie environments, mysterious beings, odd examinations, and ambiguous motives. Hungry Are the Damned exaggerates and twists these into humor. But the structure feels familiar because it draws on the same threads woven through decades of reported encounters. Whether in the Hill's hypnosis sessions, Walton's vivid reappearance, or Strieber's deeply personal narratives. The Simpsons turns these tropes into satire, yet many of the plot devices in that brief segment trace straight back to the elements that make real-world abduction stories so compelling and enigmatic. Deep Space Homer. Another episode that predicted 2 decades into the future was Deep Space Homer, where NASA sent Homer Simpson into space as a publicity stunt to revive interest in shuttle launches. And the humor comes from how unprepared and ordinary Homer is compared to the professional astronauts. The premise is based on an interesting ideal: the Teacher in Space project and other efforts to involve civilians in spaceflight to capture public imagination. In the episode, Homer floats around eating potato chips, accidentally causes chaos, and then crashes back to Earth. But the gag lands because the idea of a regular person in space was already on the cultural radar even then. But it seems like The Simpsons already knew that space tourism would eventually become a real thing. In the early 2000s, space tourism actually began with people like Dennis Tito paying to visit orbit aboard Russia's Soyuz spacecraft. Millions spent to float in microgravity and see Earth from above. That step from sci-fi to reality happened nearly a decade after The Simpsons episode aired, but it shows how the once cartoonish idea of ordinary folks in space started to take shape. Fast forward to the mid-2020s, we have companies like Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic, which are flying private citizens on suborbital trips. In April 2025, an all-female crew, including pop star Katy Perry, completed a launch that crossed the recognized boundary of space, giving them minutes of weightlessness before a safe return to Earth. This is no longer a cartoon gag, but it's more like The Simpsons saw it coming and prepared us for it, although we might not have believed or realized this. Even though Homer's disastrous shuttle mission was exaggerated for laughs, the core idea parallels real developments. Today's commercial space tourism aims to take civilians with the right training and a hefty ticket price above Earth's atmosphere for brief experiences of weightlessness and spectacular views, almost exactly what Homer accidentally achieves, minus the potato chips and chaos. The comparison becomes clearer when you think in what-if terms. What if NASA had really begun a program for everyday people in the 90s? The Simpsons riffed on that by sending Homer. In reality, space tourism has grown slowly but genuinely, from Dennis Tito in 2001 to recent suborbital flights that bring celebrities and paying passengers into space. It asks the same question the joke does. What happens when someone who isn't a professional astronaut enters the cosmos? Margine Chronicles and Mars Colonization. The Simpsons didn't only predict space tourism, but also the interesting idea of Mars colonization that experts like Elon Musk are giving now. In The Marge-Ian Chronicles, Season 27, Episode 16, The Simpsons takes a familiar sci-fi punch and plays it straight long enough to invite a real what-if comparison to humanity's aspirations beyond Earth. Marge and Lisa encounter a company called Exploration Incorporated that promises a one-way trip to Mars in 2026, and Lisa eagerly signs up to help build a colony on the Red Planet. The whole setup riffs on the idea that settlement of another world isn't just a distant NASA dream anymore, but something private ventures are loudly pitching to everyday people and adventurous souls alike. Now take that cartoon premise and imagine it side by side with real life. Over the past decade, entrepreneurs and space agencies have seriously floated the concept of Mars colonization into public consciousness. SpaceX, led by Elon Musk, has positioned Mars colonization as part of its core mission, to turn humanity into a multi-planetary species. Musk's plans include using the giant reusable Starship spacecraft to ferry cargo and eventually people to Mars, with a first uncrewed mission aimed for the mid to late 2020s and crewed flights projected afterward. The long-term vision is not just a visit, but a self-sustaining settlement, potentially growing into a city of tens or even hundreds of thousands of people by the mid-21st century. The similarities are striking. In the episode, the Mars mission has a set target year and attracts volunteers like Lisa because it promises purpose beyond the mundane world of Springfield. In real life, SpaceX's incremental goals also gravitate toward an era where humans aren't just tourists on Mars, but are seen as builders. The show captures that aspirational spark: leave Earth for a fresh start, a chance at a new civilization, and maybe a way to redefine what it means to be human beyond Earth's cradle. But there's another layer when you ask, what if? What if the 2026 target in The Simpsons had matched real tech timelines? SpaceX's approach has shifted and evolved, with recent reports noting efforts to send uncrewed Starship flights to Mars as late as end of 2026, carrying robots to scout and prepare, with human missions envisioned in subsequent windows. 2026 Alien Theories. Now, in 2026, everyone is wondering whether The Simpsons prediction is actually true. Is this year just a script that is playing out? And did we see the signs decades before? What's really happening is less a secret prophecy and more a shift in conversation. In recent years, the U.S. and other countries have held public congressional hearings on unexplained aerial phenomena, set up offices to study them, and declassified more data than in previous decades. That's transformed the narrative from crazy conspiracy to serious discussion of unidentified phenomena. Enthusiasts point to spikes in searches for phrases like UFO Disclosure 2026 as evidence that something big is coming. But analysts who watch the data closely note that increased transparency doesn't equal official proof of extraterrestrial life. It just means ambiguity is being discussed more openly. Prediction markets, which are platforms where people literally bet on whether a U.S. government will confirm aliens publicly by the end of 2026, clearly show how speculative this all is. As of early 2026, contracts assigning odds to a definitive alien announcement remain low. Even with viral statements from public figures, traders largely expect no formal government confirmation. That skepticism is grounded in how disclosure is defined, not just, "we saw something unexplained," but an explicit, "yes, non-human beings exist, and we confirm it." Then there are the internet theories that twist 2026 into something almost ritualistic. Aliens to reveal themselves at a global event, like the 2026 FIFA World Cup, or mystics like Baba Vanga allegedly foretelling first contact this year. These ideas spread fast on social platforms because they tap into a deeper longing to believe that the universe isn't silent. But they vary wildly, and most have no grounding in science or official statements. Still, The Simpsons predicted a definitive peaceful disclosure of alien life, and we can only watch and see what would happen in the future. Which of these predictions from The Simpsons surprised you the most, and what do you expect to see next? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. So, thanks for watching this video, and we will see you in the next one.